Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Michael Fling.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Lynn Hilton. I'm the producer for Goodspeed Musicals. I'm going to hide my own image right now because who wants to look at that? Oh, now I have a big Michael Fling. And I am joined here by my associate on the artistic team at Goodspeed, Michael Fling. How are you, Michael?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you?
I'm in Chester, so I actually live right down the street from the terrace on Main Street, right above the Pataconk. For all those who want to stalk me, I probably shouldn't have said that. But it's raining really crazy here, so
It is good.
we're hoping that everything stays the way it should.
Yeah, everything went really smoothly for rehearsal this afternoon, but there was not a line of thunderstorms coming through. So thank you all so much for joining us. I think people are still signing on, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We were going originally to do this event on the stage of the Goodspeed Opera House a few weeks ago, but Mother Nature presented us with other ideas. So we are really happy that so many of you have signed on to join us tonight. As you know, the Goodspeed is dark until September 11th, when we hope to open our production of South Pacific. Right now, everything remains on target for that.
This is not the poster. It just happens to be behind me.
Michael's working all the time with his fingers crossed, and so we are feeling optimistic about all that. But we're going to give you the great opportunity tonight to meet our new resident musical director, Adam Souza. So without further ado, Adam, join us.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Good. How are you doing?
We're good.
Good.
We're great.
Tucked away up here on Cape Cod.
On Cape Cod, poor thing. I feel
bad. Yeah, it's miserable.
I hold the glamorous life.
Yeah, it's rough. It's real rough.
Yeah. So by my estimation, you've been on the job for about 10 weeks, Adam.
About 10 weeks, 5 of which I've been here in this room.
How's it going so far?
It's going great. Honestly, the getting going the first month while I was up there was just filled with so much anticipation and fun, and the great Michael O'Flaherty and I on our knees painting my office, and so we're just ready to get going. So you tell me when.
I sort of forgotten about that. You have renovated Michael's old office.
Yes.
Really
and it looks fantastic.
It does look fantastic.
You did a great job.
It's all Souza.
I am my mother's son.
And I love that Michael O'Flaherty helped you paint.
Yes, he insisted. He wouldn't do it without me. It was the best.
That's so generous, just like the moms we know and love.
Yes.
So Adam,
yes.
Much of our audience may not know that you have a long history with Goodspeed.
Yes. Yes.
We're gonna go through all of that tonight. But so my question for you is, what is your earliest recollection of Goodspeed? Because you grew up right across the river.
I grew up in Killingworth, Connecticut. Yep, I'm a year 2000 graduate of HK, so I'm a neighborhood kid. My first memory of Goodspeed, I mean, aside from driving by it constantly and knowing that it's part of our area, is my grandparents and my mom and aunts took all of the cousins to see Annie 2 at the Goodspeed at Chester, I think. So that was 1990, I think. So I would have been in.
Talk amongst yourselves. I can look it up.
Sure, I think you're right.
I think it was 1990 because I was in 3rd grade. So,
yeah. I mean, we just recorded the Annie podcast. I'm pretty sure it was 1990.
1990, yeah.
1990.
Shameless plug for the podcast if you're not listening.
Available on the website or wherever you
iTunes,
find your podcast.
iTunes, Spotify, all of it.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam.
No.
The whole night's going to be like this.
No, please. That's what this is for. So I have fond memories. I feel like I saw the creative team at the stage door with my cousin Kristen, and we were sitting there waiting for autographs and stuff. So that's my first memory. My first Goodspeed memory is a Chester memory.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. So then how did you get into music? Did that happen in school, in church? How did that
I'll tell a quick story. My grandparents had a player piano in their basement, and they had all these. It was an old antique. I wish I still had it. But they had probably 100 different rolls of music, but you could take this crank and make the piano play slowly. So I would sit there and I would I was like in 4th grade, and I had started playing saxophone in school. Shout out to my local music teachers in the area, Tim D'Amato, Ted Samadel, Nancy Tazo, Christine Picard. Hi, everyone. So I was in school learning how to play the saxophone and loved reading music. And one day we were down at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather leaned over, looked at my piece, smoking his pipe, and he leaned over to my parents and he said, and I'm over at the piano, just like playing the piano. And my grandfather was like, when did Adam learn how to play the piano? And my parents were like, I don't know. and kudos to my wonderful grandparents. There was a piano in my house in 7 days, and I was in lessons, and yeah.
Amazing.
So that's sort of how the family just sort of saw it in me, and
That's great.
yeah.
So then in terms of school, how did you get involved in theater? Like, how did your love of music translate to
Honestly, theater didn't really pop into my life until high school. I was really on a classical piano front. Sally Riblet, local piano teacher in Killingworth. I was really on just a piano dork background, just on that trajectory of all the classical things. I used to drive my parents crazy playing till 10 o'clock at night. And
You're still a piano dork.
I am still a piano dork, but now it's got a little New York edge to it. So
and Karen just said in the chat, the piano you fundraised for at HK is still there. That's amazing.
It is still there. Yeah. It's
probably time for you to get them a new piano.
Well, oh God. I'll tell you exactly what I did. We were I was in seventh or 8th grade, and I went to the Nancy Tazo and Miss Virginia Rebar, our principal, and I said, I have an idea, because there wasn't a grand piano anywhere in the district. And so I had this idea to like produce this town district-wide talent show, and anybody could come and do it. And we ended up, it was like a 3-hour night, for better or for worse, right? And we raised the money, and the school the district bought their first grand piano, which is still on the stage. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's really fun.
So then I know, because I was around Goodspeed back then, that the Goodspeed Guild gave a scholarship annually to a local student who was interested in pursuing, and you actually won that scholarship.
I won it for 2 years in a row. Yeah. So Goodspeed.
It'll be 2-year winner.
Well, it was just the greatest, because the guild ultimately would accept the bill for whatever you were studying, and so my teachers would send, I got a year of piano lessons, and then voice lessons with Miss Picard, and so it was. I am very much a product of the organization, and they took an interest in helping me in high school even before I was sort of part of the organization. So I really do owe them, the Goodspeed and the Goodspeed Guild. Thank you guys so much. A huge debt of gratitude. Yeah.
Excellent.
So then, how did that get you? Was that your footway?
Well, in high school, I got cast as Tulsa in Gypsy. There's a video. None of you will ever see it.
How do you know we don't have it?
Oh God, that's gonna bite me in the butt someday. Right now, my parents are like, "We have it."
Famous last words.
Famous last words.
D.
Yeah.
Hilton at Goodspeed.com.
Oh God,
send it.
it's in a
D.
box
Hilton.
somewhere. Hopefully, it's melted in an attic somewhere. So I got the sort of theater bug at HK, and I started doing plays in high school and still studying music and piano with Miss Riblet, and I did the Goodspeed Scholarship, and then it was my junior year, I believe. It was the beginning of my junior year in high school, and Goodspeed was doing their local auditions, and that year it was at Chester. And so I remember I was like 16 and thought it was the coolest thing in the world that I got to go and audition on stage at Chester, right? I thought it was, having seen shows there. And
yeah.
So I sang for Michael O'Flaherty, and a few weeks later, Donalyn, you were directing Into the Woods at Hale Ray, and I was their rehearsal piano player, and Lisa Weil, our librarian at the time, was helping, I believe, with that production. Yep. And mentioned me to Michael O'Flaherty, who at the time was in need of some music help because the great Christopher Yonke was turning into an orchestrator and was sort of underutilized as a music assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael called me in, and my first time at Goodspeed, like behind the scenes, was working with watching the first orchestra read through for On the 20th Century. And I was like in the room, I was like the band was just on fire. It was just the coolest thing. So, and then I just sort of weaseled my way into that music department. I copied scores for the library. I taped parts. I programmed keyboards. And then after about a couple months, Michael asked me to join the department officially, and here I am.
and then blink of an eye.
I should make sure that our guests realize that you can ask some questions, and we'll drop them in as you ask them, or at the end we'll make sure to take some questions. But if you're new to Zoom, there is a Q&A. You'll see a little button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. You can just type your question in there.
Or if you're on an iPad, sometimes it's in the top corner. It kind of depends on what you're on, but there's a Q&A button. It's there.
So just type your questions in there and we'll pop them out to Adam. So you attended the Boston Conservatory.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Degree in musical theater?
Musical theater major, yeah. And I did the Boston Conservatory at the time. Now they're a part of the Berklee College of Music, but back then it was just a private conservatory. And so my studies were it was a musical theater major, and then they did like emphasis. No? I don't know.
It works for me. It sounds nice.
It doesn't make you sound smart. And so I did a Shakespeare and a conducting emphasis at the conservatory. Shakespeare. I played Malvolio in 12th Night.
I did not know that.
Yes.
For better or for worse.
I didn't know this either, because I'm a total Shakespeare nerd too. I didn't know.
There are people like right now, like, I wouldn't call myself a Shakespeare like nerd, but I did study the process.
I didn't know that. I'm really glad that we're doing this because I learned something.
We know. And I was actually going to ask before we got to college, Donalyn, how was he as a rehearsal pianist, as the director of Into the Woods?
I remember the show turned out really well.
But
I don't really remember
it was wonderful, yeah.
But it was fun. We had a good time.
It was a great time, yeah. I played
yeah. Yep.
So during you went to Boston Conservatory and you spent your summers at Goodspeed.
So every summer I'd come back. That was honestly there are so many places to be that all these musical theater conservatories are popping up, and the BOCO was so intriguing to me because it allowed me, because I was so in love with the Goodspeed, that it allowed me to keep that relationship because of proximity, and B, because they know of the Goodspeed and are proud to be near them and near us. And so while I was at school, I would come back every summer and I would be Michael's music assistant sort of from May through the end of August. So most of the season I was able to take part in. But then I would also help as the associate conductor or music director for the Chester shows back then, which had sort of smaller orchestrations back then that I would always play key two.
So what shows?
I did my first show at Chester. I played back in the day when I was in high school. I subbed on Glimmer Glass with Michael. And then after that, I did Great Expectations. I did Road to Hollywood, and I did. There was a third one. The third one was my next summer after that. So I did those two at Chester, and then the third production, Michael O'Flaherty asked me to conduct Very Good Eddie on the main stage. So that was my first main stage.
That made you the youngest person still.
No, really?
Right?
I mean, maybe I remember I had just I wasn't 21, so I couldn't drink with the cast at the Gelston House. I remember
that. Maybe Moth may be watching us, and if he is, maybe
I think he is. I think he's
I think that you are still the youngest person to ever conduct a Goodspeed.
Oh wow!
How could you not be? Nobody's ever. No. So okay, good. All right. So then you did those 4 summers, and then
after my senior year. What? My senior year in college, I finished senior year. I showcased with my class. I got a job because of my experience at Goodspeed at North Shore Music Theater. They were looking for a keyboard player, and my friend, my now longtime 20-something year friend, Jay Jay Daly, the contractor up there and an awesome trumpet player. I called him because I had been in a couple shows while in college at North Shore. And I called him and I was like, hey, I hear you're looking for a keyboard player. I need a job. And he was like, aren't you an actor? And I said, I promise you I can do this. If I can't do it, I'll fire myself. And so I showed up at the first rehearsal, and it was
Did
not.
we put that term in your contract here?
I think we did. I put it in there. Yeah. So I was in the first rehearsal, and the programming wasn't quite up to snuff on the Kurzweils, and they kept bringing in this intern who was not familiar with the board, and the rehearsal was bogged down. And so the great Dale Reeling, music supervisor and conductor of 9 at North Shore, was like, I looked up at him and I was like, and so he's like, do it. And so I just was like, thank God for Michael O'Flaherty and his, making me sit at those keyboards. So I sat there and I just did the fixes. And after our first 15-minute break, he was like, do you want to go out on the road? And I was like, with what? And he was like, we need a keyboard sub for the Les Mis tour. And I was like, what? So that was August, and I joined the Les Mis tour in the end of September of 2004.
And how old were you?
I was 22, about to turn 23. So I went out on the Les Mis tour. I was their keyboard swing for a couple months, and then they bumped me up to the hardest thing I've ever had to do to date, which is, well, that's not after playing next to normal. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but at the time it was extraordinary to play that key one book, and a huge learning experience, learning from that epic band of folks who had been playing the show for 15, 16 years at the time. So it was a huge education in and of itself.
So then really, with some exceptions, but not a lot of exceptions, you spent the next how many years on the road?
I spent the next 8 years on the road. Yeah, I did 2 years on Les Mis. That tour closed, and then I went out on the Spamalot tour as the associate conductor. Mm-hmm. And the great Ben Whiteley and Todd Ellison,
another Goodspeed alum.
Goodspeed alum and brilliant men, took a chance, and Ben wanted to do some things at the Muni and had some things, and so they bumped me up for just under a year to conduct the tour for I think it was 8-9 months or so, which was a huge learning experience. I was like 26 and sort of in over my head, which is sort of a great place to, got to learn fast. And so I did the Spamalot tour for 2.5 years, and then something we should bring up is while I was at Goodspeed, I think I played in the pit at Chester for Dorian at one point. Mm-hmm. And I had met Stephen Aremus, who was conducting Dorian, and Stephen was just starting, hadn't started readings for Wicked yet, and now he's one of the most fabulous music directors in New York. But I met him there, and we became buddies and kept in touch. And after about 2.5 years on Spamalot, he called me and asked me if I would open the second national tour of Wicked. So I went out on Wicked and was there for almost, I guess it was 3.5-4 years, including rehearsals and learning the show. On the road. So it was a total of just about 8 years on the road. So I turned 30 and sort of was like, I've got to get out of here. And then I came back, and that I finished in July, and the next thing I did with you guys was Mouseicle that fall.
Yeah, that's great. So Adam, we have a question, and I think this is a good place to drop it in. Sure. Because we're talking about your early career, which mm-hmm. Was pretty phenomenal. But what would you say to a young person considering musical theater as a major area of study and as a career, any specific specialization?
I would say to go make yourself really smart. Go to college, go to school, go read books. Performers and musicians, all the ones that I envy and look up to and respect are people that are very highly educated people. And so I think people sometimes think New York is a thing that they're like, oh, well, I got the voice, I'm going to go do it. And that is a thing, and that happens, but I would much prefer to sort of set myself up for the long run of what it is that we do, which is people that are have have a fingerprint on the world and understand what's going on and read books. And,
Yeah, I think that's so true. I say all the time that the smartest people I know are musical theater people,
yeah.
and whether they're performers or directors, choreographers, whatever. I just think that the really smart, well-rounded musical theater practitioner is a beautiful thing, and
Yeah.
I've been blessed to know
Yeah.
so many of them. So I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Because it encompasses so many different artistic disciplines all in one thing. It's the great kind of melting pot.
Well, and it's also the, collaboration does not, collaboration is, I believe, it's an easy thing to talk about, but it's an activity. It's not just something you talk about. And so I think that having collaboration skills are collaborative skills are kind of come along with an advanced mind of somebody who can reason and understand other perspectives, and why the choreographer wants this to be this way and why you want it to be this way, and discussing those things, I think, takes a lot of psychology and perspective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. We also had another question that kind of goes along with this and might be a nice segue point, which was, when did you first start to arrange music? It's a question from Nancy.
Oh, it's funny. I have found, I'll find it when I'm moving out of, when I'm in my move. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Forrest Gump, loved it, thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I thought the Forrest Gump suite was like the most beautiful thing in the world. Isn't it? Just loved it. So my parents got me the music, and I I arranged it for 3 clarinets at age 11, and it's like this, and I have it. It's this chicken scratch of like me arranging the Forrest Gump suite for a clarinet trio, which is the most. Some kids were like playing baseball and playing with trucks, and I'm like arranging clarinet trios at age 11. But I don't know if it's good, but at some point I should play through it with somebody.
Yeah, at some point we should read it down.
So I've always had sort of the interest in it. It's not something I have formally studied in school at length. Of course, we took bits of those classes, but the majority of my arranging has come in when I've been doing readings, or especially with all the relationships with the relationship that all these tours have, and that we regionally have with Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS. I've had a great opportunity as we bounce around this North America. I've probably taken part in producing and arranging 15 plus concerts, and contracting musicians, but also the pain in the butt, and also the pain and also joy of it all is then they're like, well, let's have a band, and then someone's got to write those parts. And so calls into the great Dan DeLange and all my friends and orchestrator friends. But it's something you learn as you go, and a big part of it is taste. Is so you can know all the technicalities of it all in the theory, but I think taste goes a long way. And I have great taste. So laugh, Donalyn. You're supposed to laugh at that.
You do. I think this is actually, this comes into play because when you were on the road with Wicked, you actually participated in the mounting of a Portuguese language production of Wicked in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and in a Spanish language production in Mexico City.
So those were actually after the road. So after Mousical, that next summer, I went down to Mexico first.
That must be a pretty incredible experience musically, because of the way the lyric has to be shifted to fit.
So basically, Stephen Remus came down with me to Mexico for 3 days, and we taught the opening and a few solos to people, and sort of showed me what the gig was. And then he was like, all right, I'll see you in tech. And he left. And Schwartz had written me this email, the great Stephen Schwartz, and was like, listen, I need you to make it sound like Wicked. So he one of the great reasons why I love both Stephen Remus and Stephen Schwartz is what came along with my experiences internationally with Wicked was they empowered me to just sort of just do it, and that they trusted me. And so the gig was to, for instance, in in Spanish, oh gosh, which one? Defying Gravity is 1, 2, 3, 4. Te me levo en contra de la gra. So you have to add syllables and notes to make sure that the accent on the syllables fall in the strong parts of the music, and that the words still sound like the words. And so I was basically rewriting the vocal lines here and there with Stephen Schwartz's blessing. And then he came down, and then it was a huge collaboration about, vowels, and especially in Brazil, Portuguese language has a lot of sort of darker in the throat vowels. So it's a harder sort of place to sing. So making sure that the translation we were using the correct words of a translation to make it sound as pretty as it possibly could in their mouths. It's not a direct translation. I will say that. It's more poetic. So Schwartz allows the local interpreters and translators to be artists as well.
Must have been really interesting.
Oh my gosh. And some of the greatest friends I have, they're just, in both Mexico and Brazil, just been so fun keeping in touch with these people.
So how hard was it to convince you to take this job at Goodspeed? Not
hard at all. I practically begged for it. I mean, I've been begging O'Flaherty for it for decades. So Michael and my scheme just, we introduced it to you at the proper moment.
Yeah, we fell for it.
What was that?
You fell for it. We fell for it, hook, line, and sinker.
Well, listen, it all seemed to line up sort of perfectly, and I'm just so happy to be off the road and home.
So when did you start to? Because we've talked about that this was a dream of yours.
Yeah.
When did that start to come together in your head?
I mean, in a bigger picture, I remember the first show I saw at the Opera House was Animal Crackers. My grandparents had season tickets in the raised orchestra in the back, the last row. And I remember specifically like peeking through the curtains to the front of the Opera House and through the window back there. And I just thought it was, my cousins and I still talk about it. It was just a really very memorable day at the theater with the family. And from that moment, I was just thought the organization was just extraordinary. And so as a high school musician, I had made it, by the time I started high school, it was my goal to play in a Goodspeed pit. And at the time I was like, yeah, I'll just play Barry sax. They must need a Barry sax player. I was like, I didn't know anything, And then as I learned more and more so I ended up getting to play at Goodspeed before I graduated, and I played for No No Nanette. Was my first time in the pit at Goodspeed. So it's always been a dream, just because it seemed so perfect that perfect little place was 8 minutes from where I grew up. It all sort of serendipitous.
Yes.
Is that a word?
That is a word.
Yeah.
That is a word. So what are you most excited about? I mean, as you stand at this place, it's a little bit odd because our first year together has been interrupted, but it will come.
Yes.
And I think we're all managing really well, all things considered, keeping our spirits up and all that. But so what are you excited about?
Oh, I would say there are two things. First and foremost, I think the collaboration of the creation and collaboration of orchestration that Goodspeed does is so extraordinary, and not something that lots of theaters take as seriously as Goodspeed does. So the shepherding of these orchestrations and collaboration behind them is what excites me a lot, because working with Dan DeLange on the orchestrations and why the orchestrations are what they are just sort of gets me all buzzing. So I'm very excited about that. A bigger picture, I'm really excited to be bringing Goodspeed audiences, I don't want to say contemporary pieces, because that's not what I mean. I think it's just interesting to identify, and you and I, Donalyn, have talked about this, that pieces that came out in 2000 are now not new pieces. And in our minds, the psychology behind it, we think of them as these cutting edge pieces, but they're 20 years old now. So it's the sort of discovering what our options are and what we can continue to explore to bring to the audience is the season planning is what
Right.
is very,
Yes.
very exciting to me. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. We have a special guest.
Okay.
I'm gonna pop in and say hi.
Oh God.
Maybe he has a special question. I'm not sure.
Oh
I don't
God.
know. We're gonna see.
Hey, you got it, Michael Flynn?
I do got it.
Remember, folks, if you have any questions, you can pop them in to the chat room.
And
Oh.
here we are.
Hello, Flaherty.
A special guest.
Are you there, Moff?
Am I there?
We
I can
hear
hear
you,
you.
but we
Voice.
can't hear you.
I don't see myself, but that's
I
all right.
asked you to start video.
It start my video.
Yeah, there you go.
Ah.
Hey.
Hey, Ma.
I've been listening to everything you said.
And you disagree
And-
wholeheartedly.
First of all, the plural of emphasis is emphases.
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 Thank you.
You just
Thank
need
you.
to know that.
Thank you.
Other than that, you said all the right things that I told you to say, which is good. all good.
Emphasize. I'm gonna still say emphasize.
I just want to throw out the fact that this retirement thing is really not great, and I've changed my mind. So it's been nice.
It's been nice. It's been nice. I'll say that.
But go away now.
Aww.
Now that the office is done, we were standing in the office when it was all done, and he was like, "Oh man."
Yeah, and by the way, I haven't heard anything about my bill on all that painting. So
I sent it to you, Donalyn. Did you get it?
Oh yeah, I got it. But you know what? I left it on my desk when we left the offices when we went to remote work. So I'll get to it, Moff. I'll get to it.
Yeah, sure. I've heard that before over 28 years. So
Michael Flaherty, in all seriousness, what advice do you have for Adam?
Let me get a book.
am,
I have to write this.
am I allowed to say the F word?
You can say the F word.
Don't F word it up. I have no advice for him that he doesn't already know. I mean, he and I have been cooking this up literally for years. So, you know, he was just waiting for me to get the hell out of there. So,
well, there was a whole period where he would always be like, "Well, when you have my job," and I always just thought he was sort of joking. And then at one point, I called him a few years ago, and I was like, "Are you joking about that? Because I'm not joking when we talk about that."
Michael, did you tell Adam before you told me?
The tea is being spilled.
did I tell him what?
That you were retiring?
I think so, probably, because I wanted to know it was in place. You know,
He needed to start working on his resume.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hated to let you go, but I'm thrilled that it's Adam. So we're gonna have a great time.
You, Donalyn, were the hardest person I had to tell.
Why?
Well, because I knew you weren't going to take it well, and you didn't. So,
Well, I got over it.
mm-hmm.
I've moved on.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more questions?
I don't think so. I think we got to most of them. If anyone else has any others, feel free to type them in.
All right. Well, then I think we're ready to go to Moff. We're going to say goodbye to you.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you for dropping in.
My pleasure.
Happy retirement.
Okay.
So, Adam, we have a special treat for you, and I
Oh,
think it'll
God.
be a special treat for our viewers. I asked you to select your favorite Goodspeed show,
Mm-hmm.
and you said
I said "Babes in Arms."
you did. And
did.
so we have a little
Well, there are
clip.
so many. I was trying to remember which one I picked because I
said you have
so
to pick
many.
one, and you picked Babes in Arms.
Yeah.
So, for people who don't know, Babes in Arms, 1937 musical by Rodgers and Hart, made into a 1939 film starring Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. Goodspeed has produced the show twice, one of a very short list of shows that in its history Goodspeed has put on its stage twice. Once in 1979 and again in 2002 with a book revised by Joe DiPietro. And the production we're going to show you a clip from now was directed by Greg Ganakis, choreographed by the brilliant Randy Skinner. It starred Rena Strober, Brad Alexander, Nikki James, who went on to win a Tony Award for her role in the Book of Mormon, and the incredible tap dancer and choreographer Jared Grimes.
And Leslie Kritzer.
And Leslie Kritzer.
The great Leslie Kritzer.
I had to stop.
It was a star-studded cast, yeah.
There's a little peep of Leslie right over Brad's shoulder at one point. You're like, ah! My head's exploding.
But okay. I remember I said to Donalyn, I was doing the Road to Hollywood down at Chester, and we had our show was shorter, so I'd finish the show and I'd bolt up to the Opera House, park the car, run across the street, and run upstairs just to catch the finale of Babes in Arms, because it was just so fabulous.
Well, you don't have to run upstairs. You can sit right where you are.
Right where you are.
And Fling's going to play it.
Okay, here we go.
He wrote this.
been a big joke.
That's so good.
Come on, that band. All right, I have to take a quick moment and just shout out that band. And if any of the band is on here right now, I can't wait to come and play with you guys.
You will not believe this, but when I was looking at that clip this morning, figuring out what we wanted to use, I got my phone dinged and it was Mark Slater.
Oh, yeah, I was
He was wailing on that trumpet. I said, you're not going to believe this. I'm listening to you wailing right now. So great.
And the trombone player just ripping it. Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's that band.
And what a starry cast. I mean, like Leslie, and then Nikki, you said, and Jared, who I adore, and Rick Fagno is
Rick
Rick
Fagno.
Fagno.
Jeremy Davis is in there.
Jeremy Davis, who's gone on to be in 10 Broadway shows or something.
Yeah. Sorrow. So many
Yeah.
people. So many
I just remember, and then after that show, we probably played like 3 hours of Mario Kart. You know, that's the summer at the Goodspeed.
It was a great show. All right. So this gives me the opportunity to tell our audience that every Tuesday night from now until we're back in our beautiful building, we're going to be doing a segment called Great Speed. Get it? And we'll be showing clips from a different show every Tuesday night. We'll be showing B-roll footage from a show every Tuesday night, and we'll have a special guest, someone who participated in the creation of that show, a director, choreographer, designer, actor, who participated in the creation of that show. So every Tuesday night, 5 o'clock, you'll get your weekly email with all the great stuff going on online at Goodspeed, so you can tune in and join us for that. And next Tuesday night, we're going to do clips from 1776, our 2007 production of 1776, and my guests are going to be Ron Carroll, who played Ben Franklin, and Peter Carey, who played John Adams. I was just looking at the clips this afternoon. It's such a good show. Who is that?
Everyone has to meet Miss Sophie.
Hi, Sophie.
She was asleep at my feet.
Oh,
Hi, Sophie.
I mean, we know how you're getting through this so well.
This is how I'm getting through this. Oh.
That's great. Okay, Adam, we have one more question for you. And
okay.
It's a really, really, really important one. What would you say to public school administrators regarding the importance of musical theater in schools?
Oh.
The students that get involved in theater versus other clubs or sports, and the importance to them having a group with the same interests.
Oh, I would just say to please keep going. And as schools, I'll never forget, there was one time where arts funding was about to be cut at District 17, and we all 100 kids showed up and spoke on behalf of Tim D'Amato, the great Tim D'Amato, and I never forget the look on his face when how touched he was by the community coming out to express that his work was important. And I can't tell you, I mean, those music departments in those schools in our community where Goodspeed is, like, saved my life. I mean, it not that my life was in danger, it just gave my life a purpose. And there are a lot of kids who don't connect to sports and things like other things, and so these arts programs must exist. And so I would just say, as funding is jeopardized, to please keep fighting the fight is, I think, what I'd say. Just yeah.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be together soon. Hi, Sophie. We love you so much. Sophie, so precious. Okay, to our members again. There was you got a link to an invitation for Thursday night. We're going to talk to the authors of Come From Away, David Heinen and Irene Sankoff, catch up with them. We've got some cool stuff planned for you. And then next Tuesday night, right back here for clips from 1776. If you have not already considered donating your ticket refund to Goodspeed, we would be so grateful for you to do that. We have lost 5 of 6 productions this year, and if you're in a position to consider donating your ticket refund, we really, really appreciate that. But regardless, we'll see you back here Thursday night. All right. Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
You all come visit me at the pit, everybody.
Thanks, Adam.